I'm thirsty. That's
We, is this on?
Can you check the green light now?
it's there.
It's on. The green light is on. Let's see where we are. The council needs to complete its work session this evening, and we came in here to finish the work session. So we will hopefully finish that by 25 after 7, be able to take a 5-minute break, and then begin our regular session that most of you are here for at 7:30. So I'm going to go back to the work session agenda where we have board and commission interviews. And I think we have someone, don't we, Katie?
Yes, Lexi O'Brien.
Lexi O'Brien. Lexi, you get to, where are you? Oh, there you are. What we're going to ask you to do is just stand up and come to the mic and just give us about a 3-sentence reason for applying for the PCEB.
Oh, okay. It's way easier than I anticipated. So Lexi O'Brien, I am a 30-year resident of Webster. Raised my kids here. They attended the schools. And I'm at a point in my life that I have a little more time, and I also feel a little more confident in and I would like to play a role in helping Webster Groves be the best that it can be in serving its community.
All right. Thank you. Does anybody on council have a question for Lexi? All right. Thank you. Thank you, Lexi, for applying.
Thanks,
for this. We
Lexi.
appreciate it.
Lexi.
All right, we're going to go around and do any meeting issue updates that anyone would like to bring up at this point. Does anybody have anything that they want to add to the meeting issues and updates?
No update.
I have one that I want to bring up. At the next meeting, I will give you all a thorough report from the last Missouri Municipal League board meeting, which I attended last week, because there's an awful lot going on at the state level, a lot that could have a tremendous impact on our cities. From changing the dates for municipal elections to having to declare partisanship on a local ballot. There's just, and oversight of the ARP funds that they're talking about. So given that, on February the 15th, which is our second meeting in February, the Missouri Municipal League will have its legislative conference. And we would like to go and have a good presence there. I think Marie and Eric have agreed to go. And what we need to be able to tell Katie, because we want to get into a decent hotel in Jeff City, is to tell Katie this week if you're interested in going. It's a wonderful conference, and Eric is going to help us to figure out how to be really effective when we knock on doors in the state capitol. And so I'm hoping you'll come.
Absolutely.
So anybody else have an update? Dr. Peoples?
I don't,
Neil?
thank you.
No, ma'am.
No, okay. All right, then that'll be that. But please let Katie know if you can come and join us on February the 15th. It's a Tuesday afternoon, evening, and Wednesday morning session.
And that's a meeting night?
It's a meeting night, and so
So-
one of the things that we'll need to do, if a
Yes.
lot of us are gone, we'll need to change that meeting date. We've done that before for MML legislative conferences.
Sure.
So we'll figure it out, and we'll see.
Otherwise, it'll be a really short meeting.
Yes, it'll be, because you'll lack a quorum.
Yeah.
It'll be very short, so. And in the past, we always were the city that hosted a dinner for our legislators in the area, but now that you can't spend any money on them, I think the last one, nobody came, so it's okay. We'll figure it out. Anything else? All right, tonight we have appointments to boards and commissions, and we may want to either deal with that tonight, or we may want to postpone that conversation.
We have so much to deal with tonight. Maybe we can
Wait.
wait.
We can wait and postpone that conversation about our appointments to boards and commissions. And I think that's it right now for the work session, unless somebody has something they want to add. No. All right, then we can take a very quick break. We've been meeting already for a while, and so I think the council would appreciate just taking a 5-minute break. And we'll promptly start our regular meeting at 7:30. Thank you. And chat, talk to your person next to you, whatever. Good evening, and welcome to our city council meeting. We are so glad to see so many of you here. We always encourage and are grateful for citizen participation in the work that we do. Again, if you have turned in a speaker card at remarks of visitors, we will call on you. And if you are on Zoom, I think we have 90 people on Zoom this evening. If you want to speak at remarks of visitors, you can raise your hand and we will call on you through the Zoom function. So we also have a limitation of 3 minutes to speak so that we can hear from everyone. So we'll begin tonight with a roll call. Katie?
Yes, Mayor. Mayor Welsh?
Here.
Councilmember Arnold? Here. Councilmember Bliss? Here. Councilmember Franklin? Here. Councilmember Smith?
Here.
Councilmember Alexander? Here. Councilmember Richardson? Here.
Okay.
Mayor Welch, I move that the remarks of visitors section be moved on our agenda to after consideration of Bill 9166 and Bill 972, otherwise the unfinished business section.
Any discussion? We'll call for the vote on that.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Arnold?
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss?
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander?
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson?
Yes.
Mayor Welsh?
Yes, so our remarks of visitors will occur later in the agenda. Our next agenda item is a public hearing on 55 West Moody, an application by Sunshine Peak LLC for a change of zoning from D commercial to PC planned commercial on an approximately 1.3 acre tract of land located at the following addresses: 55 West Moody and 34 North Gore Avenue. And we'll hear about that project from our Planning and Development Director, Mara Perry.
So good evening, everyone. You have before you this evening a change of zoning for a PC planned commercial district. I'm going to go through a brief presentation, which is similar to what went before the Plan Commission. Last month, the Plan Commission reviewed this request for a change of zoning, and they moved it forward to you all with a unanimous decision of 8-0. I'm going to try to explain a little bit why this is before you, because it's a little bit unusual for the reason why it's before you. This piece of property is currently zoned D Commercial District. In the D Commercial District, there are a number of uses that are allowed. And most of what the applicant does want to do is already allowed under the code. The reason to come before you and to ask for the PC planned commercial district is specifically to ask for 2 particular uses. So I'm going to go through what those uses are. In most cases, they are planning to follow everything that's already allowed in D, with the very small limitations of asking for these additional elements that are only allowed by rezoning to a PC planned commercial. So the property you can see here, which is outlined in a dark red, is for the 2 properties at 55 West Moody and 34 North Gore. You can see here the surrounding uses. There are standard uses that you would find in our D commercial district: office, restaurants, retail, personal services, banks. Across the street, we have a place of worship. We also have the Montessori School immediately to the north, as well as Union Pacific Railroad. The properties have been zoned or were zoned E industrial from 1923 until 1983. In 1983, there was a pretty large rezoning of a key series of areas that were industrial to go to a D commercial to encourage the development of the old Webster business district. The property at 34 North Gore was built approximately in 1880. It has recently, through historic tax credits, because it's part of the National Register District, been completely renovated and restored. 55 West Moody has a drive-through bank teller structure that I'm sure many of you have seen before. It was built in 1973. Back in 1973, that's when it was still zoned E industrial, which is when they still allowed drive-through ATMs in the old Webster district area. In 2019, Bank of America, many of you know, did close. They did have a lease that still extended for a certain period of time, but that was their ATM. And once they have abandoned that location and that use for more than 1 year, the nonconformity goes away. So you cannot put an ATM or a bank ATM back in that location without going through, again, this PC planned commercial process. In addition, that lot is currently being used for parking, and it's being used for parking for other businesses within the business district on lots that do not have as much parking. So if you wanted to do what we consider an accessory parking lot, which is accessory to another use on another lot, that also requires a CUP. So you can either come through with multiple CUPs, or you can come through with a PC planned commercial and integrate all those uses together into one planned development. Some photos of the property. You can see the photos at the top, 34 North Gore, as well as the very large, there's really only the one ATM, but it used to have a whole series of drive-up locations that connected to the property on Lockwood. A couple other pictures of the parking area, as well as, again, the drive-up ATM location. We always look at the comprehensive plan when looking at what our rezoning is going to go to. In this case, the planned commercial is a mixed use, and the comprehensive plan identifies mixed use in this particular area of Old Webster. When we go to do our analysis, we look at all the key elements regarding the analysis in what is being proposed. Again, when a PC planned commercial comes in, it's a preliminary development plan. They've not gotten down to the details of figuring out how everything is going to work, but they're coming in with a proposal of what they are asking for. And then the Plan Commission looks at and sees if that is a reasonable element that can go in that mixed use with the requests that they're making. So in this case, it is including all of those uses. And then also, and you can see on the plan, we'll get into a little bit the parking. The adjacent property does not have very much parking. This will share some of the parking with an adjacent property also in Old Webster. The uses that are being requested, again, in the D commercial, the list is much, much longer. Because we're identifying and creating that plan district, they are narrowing down the list of potential uses that could go on the property. So it includes a multifamily dwellings for up to 17 dwelling units, an accessory parking lot for other buildings within Old Webster, and then options of an art gallery, art studio, a bakery retail, coffee shop, no drive-through, a drive-through financial institution to address the ATM, any kinds of office uses, parking garage, personal services, and other retail sales establishments without drive-throughs. So the only drive-through request is for the ATM. We recommended in reviewing as staff how this would all be integrated together, that we would require that all the non-residential uses at 55 Moody be restricted to just the first floor. The rest of the other commercial uses will be at 34 North Gore, which is already completely a retail or office type building. We also recommended that the maximum square footage use for the commercial uses at 55 West Moody would be 5,000 square feet. And we would require that they reduce 2 dwelling units for every 1,000 square feet of commercial use. So it could be an all building that's just for the multifamily, with some of their general services and lobby and entrance on the first floor. If they do want to do commercial on the first floor, as they are designing this and working with someone, for every 1,000 square feet on that first floor of retail, they would need to reduce 2 units in the overall development. That addresses the shared parking, which I'll get to in a moment.
Can I ask, Mara, what's
Yes.
the purpose of the limiting non-residential use to only the first floor?
Because we were looking at the idea that in many cases, when you do a planned commercial, you want to think about how those uses would work. They are requesting to do the multifamily. If they're requesting to do the multifamily and they've already integrated a lot of office, having that mix provides that mix that gives you the ability to park it, because the number of residents that are there balance out the parking uses for evening versus daytime use.
And what's the purpose of decreasing the number of dwelling units per 1,000?
Because they're limited to only a certain amount of parking on the site. It's a pretty tight site. They are going to do some parking in the lower garage level, but between the lot, the lower garage level, and you'll see we have a whole calculation of how they're integrating all the parking also from 75 West Lockwood, as well as 34 North Gore. If we don't reduce the number of units, they're going to not have enough parking for the site.
Isn't there a parking garage just across the street?
That garage is not available until after hours. We have, that's limited to 2 and 3 hour uses for retail customers and clients. This is going to be primarily parking for the office users. So having them to have permanent parking spaces for them to park during the day while they're working. The parking garage is open, and in the evening you can park in it for, without any limitations. But during the day, it's limited both with parking permits as well as with 2 and 3 hour limitations. The setbacks, staff was recommending maintaining the D commercial setbacks. Again, they were proposing not to make any changes from what they were already going to be required under the D. And in maintaining the D commercial setbacks, you will note that we recently made an amendment which added some additional regulations to the rear yard based on height, depending on what it was closest to. In this case, it'll be the railroad, but it would still need to meet also the side yard setbacks. For the front setback, we made a recommendation that it needs to come up to the sidewalk for the walkability, as well as for the ability to keep the parking in the rear. We gave a recommendation that we would allow a little bit more depth to that if they were going to do projections, balconies, and other things on that area. Staff recommended maintaining the D commercial district regulations on height, which allows for a maximum of 4 stories and 56 feet. They gave a couple just sample photos of some other types of what they were looking at, with something that would probably be something similar to a 3-story. But because the code does allow up to a 4-story, we would put that in there. They're not asking for any additional height in this particular one. We also put in that they need to maintain at least 2 stories because there is an encouragement in that area to try to match with everything else that we have within the district. When we come to the intensity of use, the intensity of use has a couple different elements. There's lot coverage, floor area ratio, and minimum land area. In this case, we ran the numbers for everything that was being proposed. Again, this is just a preliminary plan. They were proposing coverage of 34.44% lot coverage of building to land area. They were proposing a 0.86 floor area ratio of the overall square footage of the structures, the existing structure, plus the proposed new structure in relationship to the overall area of the site. And with 17 dwelling units, because it's mixed use, it's always a little odd when you run that number, because it's not just land for those units, it's land for commercial spaces, office spaces in addition to those units. It puts it at about 2,730 square feet of land area per dwelling unit. Staff was recommending that we put in a maximum lot coverage of 40%. That actually matches the same percentage of lot coverage within all of our residential districts. It's maxed out at 40% for lot coverage of building to land. Maximum floor area ratio of 1.0. That would, again, sort of match some of our other multifamily districts in the overall floor area ratio. We did not think that it was necessary to set a minimum land area per dwelling unit because it is going to be a mixed development with a number of different uses. And we did keep that maximum 5,000 square feet of commercial use at the 55 West Moody. Parking was a little bit more complex, and we tried to run a couple different scenarios with those numbers to help address the issue of having both parking that is being used for potential new development as well as parking that already exists today that's being used for existing development. There are 54 existing off-street surface spaces at 55 West Moody and 14 existing off-street surface spaces at 75 West Lockwood. So 75 West Lockwood is in this corner structure right here, and they have a small parking lot that's across the street in yellow that has 14 spaces. Many of the people that are operating their businesses out of 75 West Lockwood lease parking spaces to park themselves and their employees across the street in this lot. So currently, the office tenants at 34 North Gore and 75 West Lockwood lease 34 of those 54 spaces. At some points in time, they've leased as many as 46 spaces. So in looking at those numbers and working with some of the integration of what was being potentially proposed, there was a proposal for 72 off-street surface parking spaces that would be a combination of 40 on the surface lot behind and around the building and 32 inside the lower level of the structure. There are the 14 existing off-street spaces that are still going to be provided across the street. So that would provide us with a total of 86 off-street parking spaces. In running all those numbers based on just the standard what is required again in the code, you typically would get, you have your 1.5 parking spaces per dwelling unit, which would add up to 25 spaces, and one parking space for every 300 square feet of gross floor area for any retail uses, office uses, and other things like that. So adding all that up with the proposed amount of square footage, it gets you to needing a total of 98 parking spaces. So looking at that, when you think about shared uses, when you think about the shared development area that you have customers and clients, you also have your office users, depending on who's gone and there during the day. You have the people who live in the facility who would be maybe going to work during the day. When you take all of that into account and looking at a parking study, there was a proposal of a parking reduction of 12%. That 12% would integrate into the element of the common spaces that are found in the building, the shared uses during different times of the day. In addition, we had added recently a reduction in parking if you provide bicycle parking spaces. So it also includes some additional reductions for bike parking. So based on that review and the review of the parking study and the mix of uses, staff actually recommended that they go to a maximum of a 20% parking reduction. Many developments don't, want to provide as much parking as they can for all of it. They might not need the full 20%, but at this time we would recommend the 20% reduction to not increase overall area of parking for the development.
Can you explain how that works in practice?
Mhm.
I'm a little confused.
You mean the 20% reduction? When they come in for their site development plan, so should the rezoning be approved, within 1 year, they have to come in with a final development plan. That development plan will identify more closely how much the structure, like once they get into the engineering of the site, how many parking spaces can they fit and how large the structure is going to be. Once we can run those numbers, that will help us determine if could they not really get 72 spaces due to drive aisles or landscaping or some other element to it. And then that might mean that they might need to reduce the structure down a little bit. But what we would do is we would look at the overall square footage of the structure, how many are residential units, how much is any other uses, and then integrating that would we would ensure that they meet the minimum parking requirements minus the 20%.
Can you go back one slide?
Mhm.
In regards to the one parking space for every 300 square foot gross floor area, how long is that?
So that was actually in place in Webster, probably going back for quite a number of years. It was in the D commercial district. It is not required when you are just changing user into user. If you are adding any square footage, so if you're building a new building or adding square footage, you provide the 1.3, so one for every 300 square feet. Typically, we then also have in our code that people can come in and get reductions up to We recently changed it up to 20%. Reductions can be done by staff. And then anything over a 20% reduction has to be done by the Plan Commission. That was recently updated when you guys updated the parking code. We talked with you a lot about it, but I'm sure you kind of glossed over that part of it because you were so focused on other code sections. But that was in there. We did a recent audit and update. We expanded the ability to, we added the bike parking in, which reduces the number. We expanded the ability to do the reductions in an easier manner. And then we updated some of the numbers that were a little too out there and high. It creates some lower numbers for some of the uses, and then it updated a few of the more intense uses, just a hair.
It seems a little onerous now in this program.
And again, if they would like to come back, I mean, we could do some other things, a 20% reduction. I mean, right now, if the number of spaces are being used, all of our parking permits have pretty much sold out again for this year. There's only 5 available for sale tomorrow. I have business owners upset that we have not provided them with additional parking permits. You know, it's that fine balance of trying to figure out, I mean, I understand people look at some of the parking areas, and I think some people might be hoarding a parking space for when they come back into their office. I totally get it. It's a difficult balance right now, trying to figure out what everybody's going to do. Some businesses are saying January 1, everybody come back in. We might start seeing that in terms of a lot of people using their cars. Access and circulation. Right now, there's a really, really big curb cut that goes across the whole thing. Ooh. The TVs just went off. Oh, they went back on. Eric, you're not allowed to stand up. It turns off. So there's a big single curb cut that take care of all of the spaces, all the areas where the AETMs used to be. And so staff is recommending they need to provide standard access regulations for the development. There might be some different elements that need to be addressed in the drive-through, how it's going to be accessed if someone gets stuck behind the drive-through. Usually you have a safety aisle to get around that. All of that would have to be addressed as part of the regular plan. It would just have to meet code. So that would be done during a final development plan to address how ingress and egress would happen on the site. There's a possibility, we're not limiting it, they could have an ingress on the other side of the site through the area where the setback is. So there's a lot of flexibility in this. We're not specifically stating that this is exactly where the ingress egress is going to be. Public Works did note that they will need to put a new street curb along the north frontage of 55 West Moody. All the sidewalks have to be meet city standards. The drive aisle will need to be striped with signage to prevent one-way traffic issues. And we recommended incorporating that drive-through lane that lets someone to get out in case of an emergency. Tree preservation and landscaping. Many people kind of laughed when we looked at this because there is, I think, almost no trees. They're all at the very, very back because it's just a very large parking lot that didn't have to meet our tree and landscape standards when it was built originally in the 70s. It will need to meet everything in terms of tree islands, buffers, anything else that's in the code. They're not asking for any reductions in that. Performance standards. Standard performance standards for the development would need to meet all the D performance standards, which would include light, noise, air pollution, any of those other elements that we already have put recently and updated in our codes. The Architectural Review Board will have to review the development. For all right now, there's just some photographs of just approximately what it would look like, a 3-story building. Everything would go through the Architectural Review Board should this get approved and move forward, along with their final development plan that would go back to Plan Commission. Historic preservation, 34 North Gore is located within the Old Webster local and National Register historic districts. There's no intent for it to be demolished, but we wanted to make it very clear that if something were to be changed on that, it would have to go through all the process as it would have, again, with all the renovations that have been done. Nothing's going to be happening with that structure anytime soon. 55 West Moody is not within the historic district. It's outside of both those boundaries. So it will not have to meet that extra set of regulations, but I'm sure that there will be an encouragement that it follows in keeping with the district. Before I get into staff recommendations of the ordinance, are there any questions?
Any questions?
Are there any provisions for
So right now, it still is just the 40% lot coverage, and it will have to go to MSD. So MSD is going to review the overall numbers, the stormwater plan, and we do always encourage as much as we can. We're with the tree preservation and landscape ordinance before the Plan Commission right now. We are trying to add some additional things in for green roofs, for pervious pavement, pervious pavers. That's something that we're working on right now. It'll be back at Plan Commission this month, so next week, with some initial conversation. We're going to have a draft for them probably in January. So those new provisions would be coming in around the same time that they would be potentially starting to work forward with the development. If there's nothing else, I'll go through this briefly. There's a lot of elements in this. So the list of all the approved uses is listed here. And just as a reminder, everything else in all of our codes upholds. These are just exceptions essentially to our various other codes. So the limitation on uses is listed here. Should the commercial square footage be developed on the first floor, that puts the reduction for the numbers of dwelling units for every 1,000 square feet of commercial use. All non-residential uses are limited to the north core structure, the drive-through ATM, and not to exceed on that first level. Every use shall be so operated with the performance standards of the D-commercial district. The total gross floor area of all the structures shall not exceed the 1.0 floor area ratio. Total site coverage of all the structures shall not exceed 40%. The height of all structures shall not exceed 4 stories nor be less than 2 stories. Parking for each permitted use, including 75 West Lockwood, shall be calculated per the code with a maximum 20% reduction. And if 75 West Moody goes under separate ownership from 55 West Moody, they do have to create a shared parking agreement so that that parking will still be provided for the other building. A minimum of 8 bicycle parking spaces shall be established according to the city's code. Minimum of 2 vehicle stacking spaces are supposed to be provided in the ATM area, as well as the minimum 8-foot wide outer drive to be able to access for emergency vehicles out of the queue. All structures are following the D commercial setbacks with the exception of that front building line where we're establishing that we're essentially saying it needs to be here. Sometimes we have you can be set back at a minimum or you can be a build to line. We essentially created like here's where you need to be in order to keep that walkability and that structure and to encourage the parking on the rear. If they have the functional front balconies integrated into the design, that lets them have a smaller setback from the front. Any retaining walls that are greater than 3 feet or less than 3 feet and used to elevate that site above someone else have to meet the setback of 6 feet. Signage is per the signage code, so any development area will have to meet all of our current signage requirements. Same thing with lighting. They shall not exceed 25 feet in height if they have light fixtures or on the building and meet all the lighting requirements in the building code, which includes light trespass onto neighboring properties. Opportunities for recycling shall be provided in the development. The next few are for the fire department. Restrictive gates have to have a Knox lock so they can have access. Any other additional requirements throughout the site should be at the direction of the fire chief. Fire department shall have full access during all phases of construction. And any driveways, entrances, or canopies have to be able to accommodate the fire department's ambulance and emergency vehicles. All curb cuts and driveway approaches shall meet ADA requirements, which is what we're requiring for all new sidewalks within the area. The 6-inch barrier curb shall go along the West Moody side to match the opposite side of the street. Any on-street parking spaces, they'll be able to integrate more on-street parking depending on how it all comes into play. That will be at the direction of the Director of Public Works. Landscaping shall be maintained on a final landscaping plan. All mechanical equipment, trash receptacles, all those other things will need to be screened properly with screening and landscaping. And that concludes staff's recommendations.
Thank you. Thank you, Mara, for that very thorough presentation. Are there any questions or comments from council? If not, this is a public hearing and the
So do you want the applicant to come up first
Oh,
before you go to the public hearing?
yes, the applicant may come up, please. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cole.
Hello. Mayor Welch and Dr. Peoples, we haven't met. I'm Maury Cole. And when you hear Sunshine Peak LLC, what you're really hearing is me and my wife, Elizabeth. We're 20-year Webster residents, 3 kids here in the Webster Grove schools. I'm not sure exactly how I drew tonight for our modest project. Being mindful of the 90 people on Zoom and other folks here, I'll be very, very brief. I'd like to offer my compliments to Mara Perry and also particularly Danny Gendoza. They are very user-friendly and have helped neophyte folks on a project like this get to you with relative efficiency. Our goal here is to eliminate an obsolete motor bank and do something complementary for our hometown. We believe this accomplishes that. I know you have a long evening in front of you and a lot of fellow citizens participating. So I'll be quiet and just answer any questions that you may have for me.
Thank you. I think that the council probably at this point has no questions.
Thank you
But
very much.
we will see, is there anyone from the public who has a question or a comment? You may come up and
Really quick, Dave Buck, 124 South Elm. I've said this many times before. Communities and their people move forward at the speed of trust. If there's no trust, there's no progress. It's that simple. I've known Mark for a long time because his sons and my grandson, Miles, I went to school together at Bristol. And we meet at Breadco a lot, talk a lot. I trust him implicitly, explicitly, and he would be a great person. Listen to him, trust him. I think this development is great, so.
thank you, Mr. Bach. Are there any hands up on the?
We do have one.
We have one. We now have 119 people on Zoom. Chris Earp. Mr. Earp or Miss Earp.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening.
Yes.
And in the last couple of years, I've come before the council in person and in print on many occasions stating, I'm not opposed to development in Webster. And then I go, however, and list a long litany of things that might not be so good for Webster. But in this case, I think this could be a strong project. That being said, as this develops, I urge Mr. Cole and the Planning Commission and City Council to remember that this development will affect the backyards of the residents on Marshall Place. And that being said, please remember about, we'll look at sound pressure levels and light levels. And I look forward to monitoring this project as it develops. Thanks for taking my comments.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments?
I know that there was a section in here that said that as this progresses, this will go before the architectural review board. But just out of curiosity, do you have an idea with reference to the residential units, what the proposed square footage would be for it?
Councilwoman Alexander, yes. Preliminarily, very preliminarily, it's anticipated each residential unit would be approximately 1,475 square feet.
Okay. And these are planned as condominiums versus rentals, correct?
I believe that's the most likely
Okay.
use, yes.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything else? If there isn't, thank you, Mr. Cole. Thank you, Mara Perry, and let's close this public hearing. Yes. Oh, we have another hand. Okay. Keith.
Keith Lieberman,
Keith Lieberman.
his hand went down.
It went down?
I think you did it by mistake.
Oh, his comment is we cannot hear the council. So when you speak, maybe just slip that mask down and speak into the, thank you. Keith. All right. I think we're okay now to close the public hearing.
I would move for the admission of the following exhibits: the Plan Commission Staff Report by Danny Gendusa, planner for meeting date November 8th, 2021. The applicant's written statement, proposed uses and preliminary development plan description, the Alta ACSM land survey title with subject properties highlighted, the conceptual site plan and floor plans, photos of architectural concept examples, the parking study dated November 2, 2021, the draft minutes of the November 8, 2021 Plan Commission meeting, the Director of Planning and Development's PowerPoint before City Council this evening, December 7th, 2021, and finally, the zoning code of the City of Webster Groves.
Thank you. With that, the public hearing is closed. And Councilwoman Richardson, would you call for the first and second reading of Bill 9175, please?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the first and second reading of Bill number 9175.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Bill 9175, first reading. In ordinance amending Chapter 53, the zoning code by changing the zoning from D Commercial District to PC Planned Commercial District and approving a preliminary development plan at 55 West Moody Avenue and 34 North Gore Avenue on an approximately 1.3 acre tract of land and matters related thereto.
Are there any questions or comments? Then let's do the second reading.
Bill 9175, second reading. In ordinance amending Chapter 53, the zoning code by changing the zoning from D Commercial District to PC Planned Commercial District and approving a preliminary development plan at 55 West Moody Avenue and 34 North Gore Avenue on an approximately 1.3 acre tract of land and matters related thereto.
Thank you. All right, we're moving on to Bill number 9166. Do I have a call for the third reading?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the third and final reading of Bill number 9166.
Second.
Bill 9166, third reading. In ordinance, amending Chapter 53, the zoning code by changing the zoning from A4 7,500 square foot residence district, B1, multiple family district, E industrial district, and PC planned commercial district to PC planned commercial district at the following addresses: 55 Lincoln Avenue, 62 Lincoln Avenue, 49 North Gore Avenue, 51 North Gore Avenue, 61 North Gore Avenue, 65 North Gore Avenue, 69 North Gore Avenue, 79 North Gore Avenue, 40 North Rock Hill Road, 200 Sherman Place, 201 Sherman Place, 203 Sherman Place, 205 Sherman Place, 207 Sherman Place, 200 West Kirkham Avenue, 204 West Kirkham Avenue, 234 West Kirkham Avenue, 240 West Kirkham Avenue, 242 West Kirkham Avenue, 320 West Kirkham Avenue, 340 West Kirkham Avenue, 107 West Pacific Place, 109 West Pacific Place, 111 West Pacific Place, 115 West Pacific Place, 125 West Pacific Place, 147 West Pacific Place, 207 West Pacific Place, 209 West Pacific Avenue, 211 West Pacific Avenue, 227 West Pacific Avenue, 315 West Pacific Avenue, 325 West Pacific Avenue, 341 West Pacific Avenue on an approximately 15.1 acre tract of land and repealing ordinances 3835, 3900, 6467, 7320, 7369, 7424, and 7519, and matters related thereto.
Are there any questions or comments by council before we take a vote? I believe some of the council members would like to make a statement as we take the vote. So if there are no other discussions, then Katie will begin by calling for the vote.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Bliss?
Yes, I'd just like to go through my thought process prior to voting. When discussing the future of Webster Groves and Douglas Hill doesn't need to be a community dividing topic. If we look at this project without the doomsday light or calling out the fears of what could go wrong, I'm going to start again with that sentence. I'm sorry?
Yeah, go ahead.
If we look at this project without the doomsday light or calling out the fears of what could go wrong, it opens us up to the possibility and the subsequent reality that this project would truly be transformative and bring forth gains that wouldn't otherwise be realized for decades. If we pause to challenge our assumptions of what is right or in character or what is the Webster way, we could become a more open and prosperous city for every member of our community. After all, Douglas Hill is to be built for people, all kinds of families, including those who may choose a new and different type of housing. Douglas Hill, as with any development, is full of pros and cons. First, I'm going to list the pros. First is revenue. The project would ultimately create more than $35 million conservatively for all the taxing jurisdictions, including at least $5 million for our schools. For the city, this project would have at least added $2 million during the life of the TIF, plus the potential sales tax growth from increased population and the number of retail shoppers. Next, PC zoning would once and for all create a single zone in keeping with the comprehensive plan. Lot coverage of the building footprints is 27%, less than the maximum allowed. Parking minimums are met, most of which by putting parking underground. A thriving community to attract new members that's full of new sustainable building practices, as well as better bike and pedestrian transportation, along with a live-work community built with multifamily housing that attracts a younger population. This bump in population would deliver hundreds of new customers to the doorsteps of businesses in the Old Webster Taxing District and our 4 other commercial districts in Webster Groves, especially for businesses and even nearby churches and religious communities who deliver everyday goods and services such as groceries, household goods, and healthy living, plus new customers with an expanded Great Rivers Greenway. It's documented that biking trails along business districts lend a significant increase in sales. Next, green roofs, pervious pavement, below grade water retention systems, clearing excessive vegetation, rebuilding the failing creek retention walls, and widening Shady Creek's pinch point at Gore and Kirkham are all planned for this project. Altogether, these measures, in collaboration with the city staff, respected organizations such as the Deer Creek Watershed Alliance, and the development team, I'm convinced the watershed of Shady Creek and ultimately Deer Creek would improve and thrive. And then finally, one of the benefits is the development team, who has been instrumental in other projects, is among the best this region has to offer, with a track record of hitting the mark. This is a local and high-quality team that I believe has the best interests of Webster Groves in mind. Next are the cons. Some of the cons include building height. In my opinion, the maximum building height should fall within the ordinance of 56 feet and not be raised for this project. I'm also concerned whether the 30% tree canopy will be retained, because site prep near the creek would occur by clearing nearly all at once. Throughout this process, we council members have attended many meetings with business owners, neighborhood residents, environmental organizations, the development team, and fellow council members. I also submitted numerous questions related to identifying alternative no-build scenarios for zoning the site, city funding of critically needed new infrastructure, and requesting information for reducing the building height. For the redevelopment agreement, I've sent in numerous bulleted items as a wish list from staff and the Green Space Advisory Commission, and more items to help ensure protections for existing business owners in Old Webster. Additionally, I created my own opportunities to engage in our community through office hours, knocking on doors, and standing with residents during town hall town hall, and commission meetings, and exchanging emails and phone conversations. The Webster way and the Webster character is not created by using hyperbolic language or by bullying one side of the story through bold, full-page ads and matching yard signs. We as citizens know that we have the capacity to create a more prosperous city. But I have learned from community that for you, it is a matter of taking the steps incrementally. I listened carefully to the stated concerns from the school district during the TIF commission meetings and from you that our community is not prepared to take a bold step such as this. While it is disappointing for the Chamber of Commerce, the Business Development Commission, the TIF Commission, and to those individuals who step forward to give the project their full endorsement, I do hear you. However, this evening, I must vote no. It would not be the vote I would prefer to take, but it is important to recognize our community's pace of change. Thank you.
Maybe, let's hold on to the citizen comments. Who is next?
Councilmember Franklin.
I just want to begin first by thanking our city staff. From Dr. Peoples to Neil to Eric to Mara and her team, to every boards and commission that weighed in on this, to the TIF commission. I think throughout this process, I think we've demonstrated that we have some very highly qualified, intelligent, creative city employees, and we should be grateful and thankful for that. And we should reward them as we go forward, because what makes this city churn on a daily basis are the city staff. I also want to thank the SG Collaborative team for coming forward. Despite how I'm going to vote, SG Collaborative engaged with us. I think that's a process and a paradigm that Webster has not seen in quite some time. I also want to thank the citizens of Webster Groves for getting engaged and staying engaged throughout this process. Obviously, the importance of what our community looks like is of the utmost value and character to this council as we determine how we should vote. I encourage you to stay involved and to keep voicing your opinions as to what you want to see and what you don't want to see. You know, there's a lot that could be said about the negatives throughout this process, but frankly, I look at this entire process and see a really well-functioning government, a council that has attempted at every level to engage with the citizens and to hear from them in order that we come to the right vote. And I think that Webster Groves has demonstrated that we are a city open for development, open for new ideas. They just have to fit what Webster residents want. So I think we have a bright future here in Webster Groves, and we have that bright future because of all of you, the citizens, and because of the leadership in this city. And so with that, I will vote no on this proposal.
Councilmember Smith.
Before I take my vote, I want to make sure that we do understand what we are now voting for. Listening to the citizens and neighbors of Webster is what we're here to do. That's our job, to listen to what you say you want in your city. Throughout this development, it showed us some imperfections that we had. We need to fix the flooding. We need to fix the traffic. We need to fix all the negative concepts that were brought up in this development agreement. Now, as Webster, we need to roll up our sleeves and get that done. I think we had a preliminary cost of fixing the culvert or the flooding, like 1.25 million. So somewhere along the line, Webster Groves, we must come up with that to fix it. The old community church is still there. And so nothing would happen to it. It would still remain flooding. The residents in that area on Gore, they're going to still experience flooding.
So since this was not the objective of the community to do this development, so we can have a current revenue stream for future Webster and have our business development improve, we must roll up our sleeves and do what we need to do, provide the funding to get some of these things done. So when it comes time for us to come to the residents for specific funding for specific products to solve some of these issues, like the parking, the traffic, the flooding, we need to become Webster and vote in favor of these items. I am supportive of the development because I look for the future of Webster. I probably might not be here in 20, 25 years, but I think we're laying a strong foundation for the future of Webster. Some things that I do on my own, I did on my own for us, that's about 2-3 years ago. Our children graduate from our schools. They graduate and they stay away. They don't come back. We lose almost 2,000, 2,500 students a year just to do that. So following echo Pam's comments that she made, and I'd be looking forward to working with the residents of Webster so that we can solve some of these problems that came up during this process. But my vote is no.
Councilmember Alexander.
Good evening. And thank you to the city council members. Thank you to our city administrator, Dr. Peoples, our staff, and thank you to the citizens of Webster. Like many of you, my family has lived here for a long time, for 57 years. And I've listened to the plans, I've listened to the citizens, and I think many of us agree, we are not against redevelopment in this area. We want to see redevelopment, but this is not the redevelopment that many of us want to see. I've been told, and it's been said repeatedly, that if we don't do this, we won't do anything. I refuse to accept that. I believe that we have enough of a desire, enough talent, and enough will to pull together as a community and to determine what's possible in terms of redevelopment. So for that reason, I am not voting for this development. My vote is no, and I look forward to working with the community and the citizens on what's possible for the city. Thank you.
Councilmember Richardson.
Yes, I just want to say that for me, the last year has been a process of watching good faith engagement from all sides, in addition to some of the maybe less good faith engagement we've seen. But I've seen city staff dedicate numerous extra hours at our new city manager who walked into this project not knowing what she would be getting into necessarily, and our assistant city manager who have provided over and over again the expertise and the time that we've asked of them. In addition to the rest of our city staff, and Mara Perry in particular, we are so lucky in this city to have these people here. And that's the main thing I want people to take away. We're also really lucky to have a group of citizens who can engage and can organize and can say to the council, this is not what we want. That's something else we don't take for granted. That matters a lot to me. And so I see you and I hear you. And I also really appreciate the good faith effort by the developers who live in Webster and who want what's best for the future of Webster Groves as well. This has been an educational process for all of us. It's been a hard process. It's been I would think, a lot of sleepless nights for many of us in trying to determine what really is the best plan for Webster Groves. This is not an easy question. And so for those of you who think this is crazy that we're even considering it, I ask you to think again. we have to consider these kinds of ideas and we have to start really thinking about the future of Webster Groves. But unfortunately, we are not ready. And I echo many of the comments of my fellow council members who I also really appreciate and respect the way that they have taken on this challenge and this project and really seen it through in terms of making the best decision possible. But I also will vote no.
Mayor Welsh?
I'm going to pass to Laura, so I
Okay,
always let the council
Councilmember
go
Arnold?
first.
Thank you, Mayor. The Douglas Hill proposal has been, I would argue, the most challenging thing that I've had to consider as a member of the city council. There's a lot to like about this proposal: more customers for local business, long-term tax revenue gains, more housing options, public gathering space that we really don't have in this part of town. However, there are real costs and lingering questions associated with moving forward, and that includes the displacement of the current businesses, what impact the size and scale of the project will have on our community, and the clear discomfort many in the community have with that size and scale, both for our quality of life and for the environmental consequences. The use of eminent domain is a concern for many, as well as a TIF, and then concerns about lack of agreement with the school district. And it leaves me with two questions fundamentally. Is this public investment worth the long-term benefit of this project to our community when we take into account the very significant concerns of our community members? And then the second question is, if not this project, then what? Because there is a real cost to saying no and expecting another project to easily emerge. While I agree with Karen that I am optimistic moving forward, let's not pretend that it's going to be easy. And while many residents have commented that they want a development, as the history of the site suggests, we've got work to do. So after much consideration, I will vote against the bill. I'd hoped for some way forward, but don't see it at this time, which is disappointing and frustrating. As Mr. Chapman has made clear, the size and scale of the project are what make it economically feasible, but that doesn't mean that the size and the scale of the project are appropriate for our community. I appreciate those members of the community that weighed in on both sides of the proposal, especially those of you, I know many of you spent many hours studying and reviewing documents associated with it and gave us very thoughtful comments and asked very probing questions. I really am grateful for you especially. I've weighed all the questions, concerns, the opinions I've heard. I tried to at least acknowledge all of your emails and comments. I will tell you that became absolutely impossible in the last 2 weeks just because of the volume. But we do appreciate hearing from you. And I echo my other colleagues who have made that point. I'm also going to echo the colleagues in our thanks to staff. They've worked hard throughout this process. And I think at some points in this process, they've been unfairly maligned. They're doing what we asked them to do, get us as much information as possible, ask as many questions as possible, so that we can be in a position to make a good decision for the community more generally. And I think that's what they've done. I want to thank every staff member, but especially want to thank Mara, who's retreated to her back corner seat, as well as Eric and Marie and Neil, and so many other staff members. Oh, and Katie too, as well. We can never forget Katie. Sorry, Katie, I can't leave you off here. But I will say in closing that I really challenge those of you who said, those members of our community who said, I want development, I just don't want this development. Or I want development, but not this project on this site. If we're going to move forward, we need you. We need your ideas. We need your creativity. We need your input. And I am committed to taking and using that input so that we can come up with something that we can all feel good about. Well, not all of us. The vast majority of us can feel good about moving forward with. And because fundamentally, community character to me it's about more than the buildings. It really is about who lives here and who can afford to live here and who can continue to live here. So thank you. I vote no.
Mayor Welch?
Yes, and I will echo a lot of the thank yous here for everyone who participated in this proposal. I want to thank SG Collaborative for coming forward, for responding to the RFP, and for putting all of their interest and time in this. And certainly our staff. Again, I echo everyone's thanks to the staff, to my fellow council members and to our residents. You know, I've been around for a long time, but this has drawn more community interest than anything I have ever seen over the decades. And what is really a bit heartwarming to me is that people have been very respectful during this process. We've been respectful of each other's opinions, and with very, very few exceptions, people have worked hard at thinking this through and talking with each other. You know, there are a lot of things here. I think part of what happened here was that this project is misaligned with our community values. There are things that we value here. You know, we're a community of small businesses, and the loss of so many of the businesses in that area with the possibility of eminent domain, I think was misaligned for us. We love our neighborhoods, and the prospect of traffic and destruction from construction was really difficult. We value our natural assets. Shady Creek is something that a lot of communities would love to have. This is our only water stream in this community, and the value of that cannot be denied. And I think that had an impact here too. Finally, I think there's a lot positive to come from this project. I see this community coming alive with really good ideas for appropriate projects in the redevelopment area, including a conversation I had this afternoon with a proposal that really surfaced because people got involved. We've learned a lot. I think people have participated in government processes, and I hope people don't go home and say, I'm done, because local government is all about participation from all of you. So while this is a disappointment to so many people, this really is a process that brought a lot of increased understanding and participation. And I'm pretty hopeful that all this creativity is going to result in something positive for the community. And with that, I vote no also. And we are done. All right, we can move forward with bill number 9172. Councilmember Smith.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the third and final reading of Bill number 9172 and its subsequent adoption.
Second.
Bill 9172, third reading. This is much shorter. An ordinance approving a lot split division of land at 402 East Glendale Road, zoned A4, 7,500 square foot residential.
Any questions or comments? Call for the vote.
Councilmember Franklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander.
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson.
Yes.
Mayor Welsh.
Yes.
Councilmember Arnold.
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss.
Yes.
Before we move on, we do have remarks of visitors, and so we'll see who wants to continue to speak to this. Dave Buck, I have a comment card from you.
Hey, Buck, 124 South Elm. Thanks for your votes. But I do not agree. I'm really disappointed in all of you, actually. I am very suspect whenever the council votes 7-0 one way or the other. It's like the decision by committee. I can't believe that all 7 of you voted exactly the same way on a project of this importance that has gone on for like 2 years. It boggles my mind. There are considerations in your comments that blow me away. First of all, the top 2 goals of City Council for years has been 1, ensure financial security. That's their #1 goal. Second is foster a strong business community. None of you brought up those goals. None of you brought up how this development supports those goals. And lastly, a personal thing, you know I like quotes, but this is a really big one for me. An elected representative owes the people not only his industry, but more importantly, his judgment. And he betrays the people if he sacrifices his judgment for their opinions. I've circulated that to you all before. A lot of you talked about the comments from the public, which were great and they're a consideration, but it seemed like you made your decisions based on those opinions. I'm more concerned about, Sarah, your judgment, your judgment, your judgment, your judgment, your judgment, your judgment, your judgment.
Hey, oh.
I'm not attacking. I'm just saying that I value your opinions. That's why we elected you in the first place. Not to play back people's opinions. And I'm just saying, I think we missed out. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Jackie Olson, do you have something you want to say?
Hi, I was going to implore all of you not to take away the St. Louis Gym Center by eminent domain. So I won't go down that road. I want to thank you all for your public service. I know it's very hard, and I can see that this has been a difficult project for all. So thank you for the work that you're doing for our communities. Councilmember Smith, I heard everything you said about we still need to fix these problems. And if we, the community, can help in any way, let's get together and do that. Thank you, each of you. And Mayor Welch, you were the one person that did respond to my letter in the last 2 weeks, and I was quite impressed to have gotten a response from you. And thank you all for your votes tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I think we've all had so many emails and letters, and I think on behalf of all of us, I apologize for any of them that we missed, because there were days when there were 50 emails that popped up, and sometimes it was just hard to answer all of them. Ralph Hofston?
I was going to say something, but this is good. I was taken by the comments of Mr. Franklin and other people about something positive. Karen, I wrote an email yesterday. I don't know if this is feasible, but it seemed to me that what the school district, I know it displeased a lot of people. I didn't want their kids to walk, whatever it was, but it worked. And it worked because, let's say, they were patient. Now, this is not a small development. I mean, we're talking about something big, the school district moving buildings around stuff, but it worked because they took the time and there was a constant feedback process. And then it came down to two choices. That was months after this. And that was something important. This thing that happened, this big project, took months and months too, but the feeling was always that we were never in the loop, and that the email comments went into this deep vat, you know. And I'm glad to hear the comments were read. So I will contribute, hopefully, hope for the best.
Thank you, Ralph.
But I'd like to take part, like many others.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Hofston. Thank you. Bud Belomo?
Well, I'm disappointed, as you know. Just a little bit of history for the folks up here. We started this when I was on the city council, and the mayor and I are the only ones in here of that original beginning of this whole thing years ago. But I understand you worked hard. I understand the issues in the community. I was hoping for a different outcome because I think this is a very important thing for the future of the city. A very important thing. The thing, and I disagree to some extent with what Laura says, that I don't believe anybody else is going to be interested in developing that. But what I want to say to finish just quickly is that I appreciate the work you've gone through, I really do. I appreciate the work of the people that were against the project from the start, or from the start of the information flow at least. They worked hard and they're very successful at getting the outcome they wanted. So my view now is it's done, it's over. Let's get on with business and look for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blumwell. Larry Chapman.
Good evening, everyone. Not enough time to go through all the things I'd like to say, but let me just say this. I, of course, respect your decision. And the one thing that I'm disappointed in is that in all this time that we've spent over the last 2 years, the one thing we never heard was what you would accept. Yes, I told you that for all the things we were giving, this was as far as we could go, but I never once heard, well, this would be okay and this would be okay. I just didn't. If you can show me where that was done, and we could have tried to accommodate, but it didn't. So if you're going to go forward, you're going to need to send a clear message to others of what you will be willing to accept and allow go forward, because without that, I don't know how you're going to attract anybody. I just don't. It's very complicated. It's super expensive. We had to spend more than $1 million just to get you the information that you wanted. Other people are going to have to do that too. How are you going to encourage them to do that if they don't know what is going to be okay? So first thing you need to do is encourage all of you to put together a set of things that are in fact acceptable so that you can actually get somebody to come to the table. Because without it, I don't think you're going to get anybody. As much as you believe that, I just don't think you are. That's 42 years of experience in this business talking. So appreciate what you've all done. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. Thank you very much for all your efforts. David Suttle.
Thank you, David Suttle. Many of you may know from Suttle Menlin, the design firm that was many years here in Webster Groves, and
Oh,
my
yeah.
partner was on the architecture review board. We love Webster Groves. We did the Straub's redo and the corner of the bank, and love the streets and the character of the city. Having said that, proposing a major development in a community like this is just very difficult. It's a horrendous thing to do. And as has been said, the amount of effort and money that it takes to do it, and you come up with an answer like this. I would say that from experience in Highland Park, Illinois, the city paid for all of the structured parking. And therefore, the development that built on top of it could be affordable. So there's going to have to be give to get what you want. A bit smaller, a bit more this and that. It doesn't happen because people have to make money at what they're doing. And you can't just tell somebody to make a park out of it and it'll be what the community wants. So it's a real challenge. But I know that from a density and all of these things that you're talking about, that'll take care of itself. The one thing I would like to suggest, and I haven't looked at the plan other than just the simple plan that shows the meandering street and so forth. I think the most important thing to me as a planner is to look at how the existing city has a continuous unbroken fabric that connects whatever is new with the old. The minute you stop and put a break in a shopping street or a mall or anything else, people just stop. There's no continuity. So to worship at the altar of continuity of sidewalks, amenities, retail, whatever it is, that's important. I would suggest that it seems difficult to have a single street paralleling the existing street. Doesn't exactly suggest that. Maybe it could happen. However, continuing at great effort, the grid of the streets of the city, pulling the two together might be a place to start. I haven't studied it, but those are my thoughts, and I wish you the very best because we love this city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
David.
Mr. Suttle. Jean Hudson.
I have nothing but accolades for you all. It has been so arduous. You all are worn out, but so are we. going back and forth and not knowing which way we were going from time to time. I applaud each of you. I know your decision is very hard tonight. Laura, something you said before really stuck with me. It's not that we didn't want it. It was too big for where it was. And the TIF bothered me in that the night, January the 1st, you won't be able to get TIF in a floodplain. I don't know about planning. I don't know about building. I don't have to worry about it because I live in the historic district and you're not coming to my area. You're not going to go to the park. You're not going to involve any of us, but it did not mean we didn't care. And it did not mean because we were not going to be involved that we're not here tonight. Because we all care. We all care about Webster. And you're right. We've got to put our minds together and figure out what we're going to do. But 2 stories underneath and great gigantic buildings looking at each other, and our poor little shady creek without our deer and our little turtle and beaver and whatever, and goats eating up the vegetation. Oh, who missed that? You know, like I said, there's so many of us. We're not involved. You're not coming to my area. You're coming down Kirkham, coming down those little homes. But you made it arduous. Not you all, I'm not implying each one of you did it, but you made it arduous for those people to do certain things in that area. I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, because I know this has been a long, arduous process. And thank you for listening to the people who love and will support you in this community. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jean. Do we have hands up from our 119 participants? Okay. Mary Becker.
Unmute, Mary.
Okay, Mary, unmute yourself.
I'm sorry, I pressed the wrong button. But thank you for all your work. All right, take care.
Thank you, Mary Becker. Are there any other hands up? Okay, that concludes remarks of visitors. We are now on to new business, and I believe.
I would like to move to postpone indefinitely the consideration of ordinances number 9169, 9170, and 9171.
Second.
Right, we have a motion to postpone. Any questions or comments? Let's call for the vote.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Smith,
No.
Councilmember Alexander,
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson,
Yes.
Mayor Welsh,
Yes.
Councilmember Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss,
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin.
Yes.
All right, the 3 TIF ordinances have been postponed indefinitely. So we will move on to bill number 9173, Councilwoman Bliss.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the first and second reading of Bill number 9173.
Bill 9173, first reading. An ordinance of the City of Webster Groves, Missouri, authorizing and directing the submission of a ballot proposition to the qualified voters of the City of Webster Groves, Missouri on April the 5th, 2022, to consider imposing a local use tax at the same rate as the local sales tax of the City of Webster Groves, Missouri for purchases from out-of-state vendors.
Are there any questions or comments? Then let's go for that second reading.
Bill 9173, second reading. An ordinance of the City of Webster Groves, Missouri, authorizing and directing the submission of a ballot proposition to the qualified voters of the City of Webster Groves, Missouri on April the 5th, 2022, to consider imposing a local use tax at the same rate as the local sales tax of the City of Webster Groves, Missouri for purchases from out-of-state vendors.
All right, we'll move on to Resolution 2021-67, which is an exciting resolution. Councilwoman Arnold.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the reading of of resolution 201-67 and its subsequent adoption.
Resolution 2021-67, authorizing the city manager to purchase an ambulance for the fire department.
So who is coming up to tell us about our new ambulance? Captain Grossenheider, yay.
Good evening, everybody. So I'm Captain Grossenheider. A few months back, we were tasked, myself and 5 other of the firefighters, to find a suitable replacement for our frontline ambulance. We did several months of research, including talking to several vendors and going to other fire departments that had different manufacturers of ambulances, and did a lot of research and put together a spec for a new ambulance to send to vendors. We sent 5 specs out. We got 2 back for bids, and out of the 2 we received back, we decided that AEB was the most appropriate ambulance for the citizens in the fire department.
Great. So this is a really nice addition to the fire department and a good one for our citizens,
It
right?
will be indeed, yes. The best we could find. Oh, I said the best we could find.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, this is a replacement, not an addition.
Correct. So we have a frontline ambulance in the reserve. The reserve is 2009, I believe, has about 150,000 miles on it. So that would be replaced by our current frontline ambulance, and the new ambulance would take the place of our frontline ambulance. So,
Thank you, Kevin.
yep.
Good. Good news.
Absolutely.
Any questions? Thank you. We'll call
Thanks.
for the vote.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Alexander?
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson?
Yes.
Mayor Welsh?
Yes.
Councilmember Arnold?
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss?
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin? Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember, yes.
I move to consider all 3 readings of bill number 9174 because of a pending personnel matter that is urgent and needs to be resolved.
Second.
Let's vote on that.
Okay. Councilmember Richardson?
Yes.
Mayor Welsh?
Yes.
Councilmember Arnold?
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss?
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin? Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander?
All right, let's do that first, second, and third reading.
Bill 9174, first reading. An ordinance amending ordinance 9151, defining the compensation for certain employees in said classifications.
Any questions or comments? Do the second reading.
Second reading, Bill 9174, an ordinance amending ordinance 9151, defining the compensation for certain employees in said classifications.
Any questions or comments? Do the third reading.
Third and final reading of Bill 9174, an ordinance amending ordinance 9151, defining the compensation for certain employees in said classifications.
All right, let's call for the vote.
Mayor Welsh?
Yes.
Councilmember Arnold?
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss?
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin? Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander? Councilmember Richardson?
Yes.
All right, does anyone care to remove anything from the consent agenda? If not, Councilwoman Alexander, could you call for its approval?
Yes, ma'am, I would like to call for approval of the consent agenda.
Councilmember Arnold?
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss?
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin? Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander?
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson?
Yes.
Mayor Welsh?
Yes. All right, we have no appointments to boards and commissions this evening and no more executive closed session. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.